Hi, my name is Leo McPhee, and I'm here with Robert Simmons from Heaven and Earth. And today we're going to be talking about a stone that's new to us called Cinnazez. And there's a lot of interesting things about this stone, so tell us about it, Robert.
Well, the thing that probably excited me first and foremost about this is Cinnazez is a combination of white quartz and red cinnabar. And cinnabar is one of the very rare materials in the world of minerals and is one of the true reds that comes out in color in minerals too.
Yes.
Cinnabar is mercury sulfide, and the white part of Cinnazez is quartz. But it's more than quartz because, as I found out when we discovered it, it's a form of Azeztulite. And this stone, the thing I'm always very enthused to say to people about this stone is that it's from New Zealand.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
it's true that in another few days after we finish this, I'm going to move to New Zealand. And one of the big reasons that I'm going with my wife, Kathy, is that we want to be around the New Zealand Azeztulite. The energy of New Zealand Azeztulite, which we call sarolite in some of its examples, is the most complex, the most evolved, and the sweetest energy of any of the Azeztulites, at least in my experience with them.
Yes.
So I had long been sort of deluged over the years with requests from people for cinnabar. Lots of people wanted cinnabar because they had read different things about its energies in a number of different books, not just mine.
Right.
And, you know, it was a desirable stone and a beautiful stone, and it's hard to come by. And I discovered through my friends in New Zealand that there is this cinnabar quartz or cinnabar azeztulite mixture from the South Island of New Zealand. And thanks to my friends there who have been digging rocks in New Zealand for 50 years, they know where to go. And they got me a small supply of this just a few months ago.
Yes. I remember when that package came.
Oh,
you were very excited.
I was. You're right. I mean, it was way better than I thought. You know, they just told me they were sending me cinnabar, and I thought it might be sort of all red color and rather dull looking, because sometimes massive cinnabar from the ground, when they find that, that's what it looks like. It looks a bit like a brick.
Right.
But this is so spectacular compared to that. This is, you know, veined with all this brilliant red and orange red color on this backdrop of beautiful white quartz. And then energetically, there's this vibrational synergy between the cinnabar and the azeztulite.
Yes.
And that actually is where the name comes from. Cinnazez just means cinnabar azeztulite.
Right.
And it's something that has all of the intensity and high vibration that I think of with azeztulite. And at the same time, this one is faster energetically. Like my experience of it in the body is the pulsations, where azeztulite might typically go like that, that, about that frequency. The Cinnazez kind of goes like that. And there's a sort of a lightning fast permeation of the body by the energy of these stones. And it doesn't surprise me in a certain way, because mercury, of course it's called quicksilver, that's the other name for mercury.
Yes.
And in alchemy, mercury was associated with Hermes, and Hermes' name in Latin was Mercury. In Roman mythology, Hermes from the Greek was Mercury.
Yes.
Both of them are the messengers of the gods and the deities associated with alchemy. And in alchemy, mercury, i.e. the cinnabar, was used in the transmutation of lead to gold. It was a really important part of that process.
Yes.
And a lot of alchemists didn't succeed, but almost all of them used cinnabar in order to derive the mercury that they wanted. So, what was your experience when you held it?
Well, my experience was similar to what you said, and I was familiar with the sorrelite Azeztulite from New Zealand, which I would describe similarly in terms of I'd say it's as high frequency as any stone, maybe other than phenakite, that I've ever felt.
Yes.
In terms of just a very refined, super, super high vibration. So that's the quartz, the sorrelite Azeztulite from New Zealand, and it seemed to carry with it this incredible, almost like breath of fresh air energy. And in the way that I think a lot of people think of New Zealand, even if they haven't been there, is kind of like the way that sorrelite Azeztulite feels to me. And then when I felt this, I looked at it and I thought, oh, that's interesting, but I was not at all prepared for how powerful it actually was, which is like it had that super high frequency of the quartz, sorrelite Azeztulite, but the cinnabar, it's almost like the sorrelite was like a perfect carrier for the cinnabar to be most available and most, sort of something that I could feel in my body. And super, middle body area, chakrically speaking, activator, like as intense as anything I think I've ever felt.
That's one thing I get about it too, is because of the cinnabar in the Azeztulite, you get the power, this sort of amplification of what's in the cinnabar, because the Azeztulite is doing that amplification because of its own energy.
Yes.
And it's also, it goes down lower in the body than Azeztulite typically is felt.
Yes.
I mean, Azeztulite tends to operate up here and above the head.
Yep.
And it can fill up the whole body, but it takes a little more time working with it to get to that place.
Where this is like
right through everything. And right down to the base chakra. The base chakra right at the bottom of the spine.
Yep.
That is where this goes in terms of the linear motion of the energy. Like if we start at the head with it, like I'd like to do, or even up here on the crown. Ooh, actually, that's great. That's like a spiral of energy going right down inside the spinal cord and kind of pooling and collecting at the base.
Yes.
And I think my sense was when we worked with this that this is prana building up. Prana meaning life force. That's the Hindu word for the spiritual life force.
Yes.
Prana building up at the base of the spine. And, eventually, of course, that can lead to Kundalini awakening, which is an energy where in the body where energy moves very powerfully up the spine from the base and finally opens up the crown chakra at the top of the head.
Yes.
So this is a stone, I think, that is good for that process and is good for what you might call the alchemical transmutation of the individual.
Yes.
In alchemy, they said that they were transmuting lead to gold, but the alchemists spoke a lot in metaphors. And when they talked about spiritual alchemy, they still said they were changing lead to gold, but what they meant was they were transmuting the leaden qualities of the human who isn't awakened yet into the golden qualities, the light emanating qualities of the fully enlightened or awakened person.
Yes.
That's the spiritual alchemy, and I feel like this Cinnazez is the ideal stone for doing spiritual alchemy.
Yes, I do feel that absolutely, and it strikes me that I don't know, because of the high frequency of the sorrelite, Azeztulite, being the carrier for the cinnabar, I can't really think of almost any other stone in this orange-red range that has that ability to go so quickly, so deeply, so quickly.
I mean, a lot of the red stones, such as cuprite, ruby, some of the other red stones, resonate at the base chakra. They resonate at the base of the spine. But what they don't have that this does is that electrical movement through the whole chakra system.
Exactly.
They just kind of stay down there and they strengthen that area, but they don't wake everything up the way this does. And another thing that I'm just seeing now as I'm talking about the stone is that it's a stone for the enhancement of the functioning of the nervous system.
Ah, right.
And it makes a lot of sense to me because on the opposite, you know how in homeopathy you take a tiny bit of something that makes you sick and that makes you well from whatever it was that, a lot of this substance would have made you sick from. That's the way homeopathy works.
Right.
If you take a lot of mercury, which is what the cinnabar is, mercury sulfide, into your body, it's toxic, and it goes to the nervous system. That's where most of the toxicity is when you get that. So my feeling is when you work with it, not on the level of imbibing it, but just energetically through being with the cinnabar, you're getting a kind of homeopathic dose of what mercury does.
Exactly.
Which is to say, instead of, hurting the nervous system, it stimulates the nervous system.
Right.
And I felt that. I actually saw just now when I was tuning in, holding that piece, a whole tree of dendritic connections. It was as though I could see inside my own brain for a second there and feel the electrical impulse of a lot of neurons firing.
Right.
To generate the very image I was seeing.
Right, and it's almost like, I think, in terms of this time, 2012 into 2013, which is when this stone, when we found it.
That's right.
It seems to go along with some of the other stones that we found recently. It's almost like it's, in a sense, a stone for rewiring the nervous system and rewiring, the whole mental system to be able to be with the way that things can be now more.
That's right. I would say that too, that we're in an evolutionary time spiritually. And spiritual evolution can be a lot more rapid than biological evolution tends to be. And my dream, my hope, and my vision is that biological evolution can be stimulated by willfully activated spiritual evolution.
Yes.
In other words, you aim yourself at spiritual evolution and the body comes with you.
Yes.
So that the transmutation not only of consciousness but even of the body is a part of this alchemical change that we can facilitate with a number of stones, and this one very much in particular.
Yes.
It's not a stone of calming, it's a stone of activation.
Absolutely.
It's not a stone of emotional healing, it's a stone of consciousness stimulation.
And embodying.
And embodying that, in the cells.
Yes.
So that makes a lot of sense to me. What were you going to say? What do you want to say about it any more than what we've been saying?
Just that I'm getting more as you're speaking and kind of getting more about it because I've been with it along with other stones that we've been finding recently. But it is very strong and very supportive and very physical, energetically. I mean, I feel it very physically, even though it's so high frequency, which is also kind of unusual with any stone.
It is.
And, I guess I just want to ask if there's any last things, that you want to mention about it, about how to work with it, or...
Well, working with it, there's a couple of things to say. I do think that carrying the stone or wearing it, we haven't got any beads or anything on the display here, but we will be having them. And, cabochons and such. And we'll have little pendants made out of the tumbled ones that people can wear. Getting it on your body and wearing it through the day is a way to infuse yourself with the vibrations of any stone, and this one, in particular.
Right.
As far as meditation goes, I think you explore inwardly and you go where it takes you, but following the stone energy through the body and kind of encouraging that energy to permeate everything. And you could even say willfully trying to open up and be willing for that energy to penetrate, I think facilitates the process of that alchemical shift from a leaden, human being in a lower state of consciousness to the gold state of higher consciousness, to use those alchemical words.
Yes.
I do want to mention, speaking of alchemical changes, one of the things that you've been doing and I think got pretty excited about was that the Azazeo activation.
That's right.
Of Cinnazez.
Yes.
Because this is one of the Azeztulite family, and as such, it's been able to be what we call super activated through exposure to that energy field.
Yes, that's right. And this is one that's so strong to begin with. I mean, just sort of out of the gate, you could say. And then I was surprised and pleased and even shocked at how much more powerful or energetic. It was after the Azazeo activation. So
And
I'm
faster
glad you
too, I
remembered that.
thought. This is fast anyway in terms of the way it moves.
Yes.
But it just seemed like just instant going through when you had done the Azazeo activation on it.
That's right.
And just as a 30-second thing for people who don't know what I'm saying, when I say Azazeo activation, there was a sort of a visionary moment where we were shown the way of creating an energy field with a pyramid and a labyrinth and a lot of Azeztulite around it, and Azeztulite inside the pyramid, and a huge phenokite and another almost as huge phenokite, both above and below, at the bottom of the pyramid, in the center, and at the top.
Mm-hmm.
And with a ritual and so forth, which we've talked about this on another video.
Yes.
That whole process, which we called the Azazeo activation, is what we subject different Azeztulites to see if we can bring them up to a higher level. And with the Cinnazez, it really worked.
Yes, and I'll say simply too about the Azazeo process is it seems to amplify what's already present. It doesn't change it necessarily, but it amplifies it and makes it that much more available, that much more powerful if it's a quartz-based crystal or
That's right.
quartz-based Azeztulite. So more about that in another episode.
So I guess the one thing I'll say is that as soon as I get to New Zealand, I'm going right for the Cinnazez digging site with my friends, and we're going to try to get a big enough supply so that we'll be able to offer it to everybody who wants some.
Yes. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that shipment.
Oh, I bet.
So I want to thank you, Robert, for telling us about Cinnazez, and if you want to find out more, go to heavenandearthjewelry.com. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. I hope it was as much fun for you as it was for us.
Yes.